Good morning. Happy Thursday. So, we are starting chapter 9 today. We'll be reading the first 21 verses. And the first part of chapter 9, you see kind of like a significant shift in Jesus' ministry. And that shift consists of his disciples going from observers to participants, right? So it says in the text that Jesus actually trained them and taught them to go out. What's interesting is it says he gives them complete power over all demons and diseases, which is interesting. And I don't want to get too much in the weeds. Let the text just speak. But the bottom line is obviously they've seen Jesus do this, and now Jesus doesn't just instruct them, but the disciples are actually given the spiritual capacity and the power to do these things themselves. And he sends them out not alone as individuals, he sends them out two by two, which I think is also interesting. And then when they come back after a time, they report all the things that have happened, right? And think about how the disciples must feel. They must be pretty stoked about this, right? Somewhere between surprised that they could do this, maybe a little bit of pride, like, hey, look who I am, and maybe just this genuine sense of pleasure because they're doing God's service, right? Probably a mix of all of those emotions are taking place. And Jesus decides, let's go to Bethsaida. Now, why? I want you to see in the text, why does he want to go to Bethsaida? And it says in the text that he wanted to be alone with them. Like he wanted to let them be refreshed. Jesus wanted to be refreshed. And he wants to probably debrief and continue this training and this equipping that Jesus is doing with intentionality. Okay. But what happens? Because again, Jesus' popularity is exploding, that crowds start to find them and follow them. And before you know it, this intended time to be with his guys becomes a broad time. And the crowd grows and grows and grows. And it's interesting that it says in the text that Jesus welcomes them. So what does that teach us about the nature of service to others? Okay. Are you willing to have your plans interrupted for a God, like a God sighting? Like if God's up to something, do you give room for you to change your schedule or to be interrupted or to have your plans altered? It's interesting. It teaches us a lot about what it is to serve God and to serve people. Then what's happening is they're in a pretty remote place and these people are hungry. So this has been an extended period that they're spending time with Jesus. And the text says that Jesus has compassion on them. And he says, he's informed that you got to get rid of these people, Jesus. Like it's a long day and they're hungry. Get them home. The disciples kind of had enough. Right? And instead of Jesus saying, you know what, you're right, guys. Let's send everybody home. Tell them that the seminar is over. Okay? No, he doesn't do that. He says, oh, they're hungry? You give them something to eat. And again, I want you to see the great intentionality about that. And it says that it's 5,000 men. Now, there were women and children, certainly. But again, back in the first century, women and children are so marginalized that I guess they're not even, they don't even warrant being counted in the numbers of attendees. Okay, so let's just say, I don't know, it's 7,000, 8,000. I don't know. There's a lot of people. And Jesus has them sit down in groups of 50. And I want you to take in and think about him, the ridiculous nature of Jesus taking just a few elements, giving thanks over them. And imagine how the disciples feel watching this. And they're like, I got 5, 6, 7, 8,000 hungry people. And I'm going to go out with this basket. And after about like the fourth person, I got nothing left. What are we doing? Like, I'm sure they had to be thinking that. And then I want you to also take in what you think they must have felt as this miracle of the feeding of the masses is actually unfolding, right? It's like the basket, the basket just kind of like they just keep getting filled and they keep feeding. And not only are they blown away that Jesus did this, but they have to be blown away that they're participating in this. So take that in, soak that in. And then after this, like, think about the significance of what that must have been like. And isn't it incredible how you see God allowing Jesus to demonstrate his power and authority over so many elements of life, right? So even he can even now take some fish and a few loaves of bread and do some incredible things with them. Now, the crowds leave finally, and Jesus finally gets a time to pray. I think it's in verse 18 and following, where Jesus goes alone. He gets to have some alone time and pray, and the disciples then meet up with him, and they're finally alone. And it is in this context that Jesus finally gets to debrief with them. And then he asks first a question that is a powerful question, which is, who do people say that I am? And the disciples share from their visitations, right? Gives Jesus a general sense of kind of what the take on Jesus is. And they give him all different answers. They think you're the reincarnation of Elijah or John the Baptist. They give him all different things. But, he's holy, you're a prophet. And then Jesus asked probably the most important question that can ever be asked in the Bible. It says that Jesus turns to Peter and says, "But what about you, Peter? Who do you say that I am?" And Jesus says, "You are the one. You are the Christ. You are the Messiah." And then in another text, not in Luke, but in other accounts, Jesus says something very interesting. He says that was not revealed to you by human reasoning, by flesh and blood, but it was given to you. That understanding was given to you from above. Wow. And that kind of relates to some of the things we've been talking about having ears to hear, right? And then from there, Jesus, for the first time, starts to tell and share with his guys what's going to happen. And it's probably the first time that they hear that the thing that they expected about this victorious Messiah, that there's going to be a major twist in this, what they thought was a glorious plan. And it's less than glorious. Jesus starts telling them about the opposition, and that at some point this opposition is going to get what they want, which is they're going to get Jesus removed. But he tells them it's going to be victorious anyway. It's part of the plan. Jesus tells them that his death is part of a bigger plan that's even more glorious than his disciples imagined. So enjoy the reading, enjoy the exploration, and have a great Thursday. Love you guys.